When you hear the phrase vulnerable leader, what comes to mind?
Authenticity. This is a topic that's extremely current. How critical it is for leaders to start with vulnerability. If you're not vulnerable as a leader, there is no chance that your team is going to feel.
When you hear the phrase vulnerable leader, what comes to mind?
Authenticity pops out. Yep.
And so authenticity, maybe you can expand
Yeah.
on that a little bit of what does that mean?
I thought we were playing a word game. So
No.
I gave you the word game. So vulnerable leaders are, by the way, this is a topic that's extremely current. I gave a presentation yesterday to about 800 Procore employees on my thoughts on this. And it's dawned on me recently about how critical it is for leaders to start with vulnerability. And here's why. Well, first, it's demonstrating safe behavior. So what I mean by that is, if you're not vulnerable as a leader, there is no chance that your team is going to feel that they can be vulnerable. And so here's the business reason why it's so important. Is that I think vulnerability leads to inquiry and curiosity. So when you don't know the answer to a question, you have to be vulnerable because you're telling people, I don't have the answers, right? And the minute you say that you don't have the answers, you're opening yourself up. Well, first of all, it's being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up for you can bring some fear to that. Some people might not respond well to that. But what you're really doing is you're setting yourself up for a learning, right? Now you can take that curiosity and turn it into a learning. And that learning drives momentum, not only for yourself professionally, but it also drives momentum in moving business ideas forward. And where you don't have vulnerability, you basically can't fuel curiosity, and therefore you can't fuel momentum and learning. And so if you want to look at a strict business reason why vulnerability, leadership is really important, that's that. The second piece is engagement. And people that work around you are going to feel much more close to you and the problem space that they're working in if they feel like they can bring their authentic self to work every day. And that's not easy. You know, frankly, I've worked most of my career and I had my Tooey face that I would bring as a professional, but then the person that you'd meet at home would be a little bit of a different person, right? I felt more safe to be who I was. So
let's talk a little bit about that, because I feel like that's for a lot of leaders, that's how it used to be, right? You have your work persona and you have your personal persona. So is that how you used to be?
Oh gosh, yes. And by the way, we're not talking about ancient history now. I'm talking about just over the last few years. I've had this realization. Can I tell you a quick story? Or
stories are the most important part of this conversation. So the more stories and anecdotes and experiences that come out, that's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So here was my path. So I've been running Procore now for about 20 years, and it wasn't until around 2015, 2016 where we started seeing some traction in the market. So we had a long, dark period of time where it was a small group of people that I had a high level of trust with at Procore that were solving these problems, and it was a lot of fun. And I was with people I knew and trusted, so I could be myself. What happened was, as Procore started to scale, I started having to go to investor conferences, with a bunch of other CEOs who were at much bigger companies. Yeah. All of them wearing their Patagonia vests, all of them having graduated from Stanford, and I'm a carpenter by trade. I'm a college dropout, and I was the oddball out, but I would sit there and I would really just have this imposter syndrome that was just debilitating, and it just got worse over time. The more I met these Silicon Valley, highly accomplished CEOs, the more I felt like I wasn't one of them, right? And I started questioning who I was. And so I'll never forget, this was over a long period of time, a couple of years, where my wife asked me one day how I was doing, and I said, frankly, I think I'm relatively miserable. I don't know who I am, and I'm really confused because I feel like I'm an imposter. And so she goes, well, look, prior to the success that Procore started seeing, you were the person at work and the person at home were the same person. Like, you're trying to be somebody you're not because you think that that's the archetype of what a CEO is supposed to be, you should just like be yourself. And it took me a little bit of time, but I realized that I had to do that for my own sanity, to just go back to who I was, and then to realize that like this is being vulnerable, right? I'm going to be myself, and they're either going to like me or respect me or value me, or they're going to fire me, right? And I realized that I would rather be fired and be authentic than be a phony showing up being somebody I wasn't every day. And so I did. And I'll tell you, Jacob, it is the most liberating feeling in the world. First of all, there's a lot of fear associated with that, right?
Yes,
I could have lost everything. But the reality is that the fear of being vulnerable rarely, if ever, matches the reality. In fact, what I found was the opposite, which was people gravitated towards me. They wanted to help me. They wanted to support me. They wanted to be led by me because they realized that I was not going to pretend to be somebody I wasn't. Yeah. I was going to be direct and vulnerable and just open and transparent. And I just wish I had done it sooner.
So you thought your board and the investors were going to fire you if you were...
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
yeah. Well, the other thing, just as an esoteric part of this, I also felt like employees wouldn't follow me, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just about if I lost my job. I just thought people aren't going to, by the way, there's a lot of leaders in Silicon Valley that are, big personalities, right? You look at the Benioffs and the Musks and the Dorseys of the world. These people stand up there and they say stuff that is just, outrageously confident, right? That's just not my style. So I felt like people weren't going to want to follow me. But what it turned out is that being vulnerable attracted people who wanted to be vulnerable themselves, which again drives business velocity because I'm not going to have all the answers, and it paid off.